I personally wouldn't ask the pastor who's already a member because he's probably going to say, yeah, sure, it's fine. I see a lot of pastors, in my opinion, who compromise in this area. They're in the organizations, and some of them may even be sound theologically, but it's like you're sound, but you're telling people that it's okay to bow at an altar.
Well, hey, everyone. Welcome to the Alisa Childers podcast, where it's always my goal to help equip Christians to identify the core beliefs of historic Christianity, discern its counterfeits, and proclaim the gospel with clarity, kindness, and truth. And today's episode was so fascinating. I just got off a call with Ty Jones, who has a great YouTube channel called Miss Titus Jones. She's on TikTok and Instagram and all the places doing some really great work. And today we talked about the connection between Freemasonry and the sororities and fraternities on our college campuses. Ultimately, we're asking the question, can Christians pledge for sororities or fraternities? We got Ty's opinion on that. Fascinating episode. And before we get into it, though, I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Brave Books, which is a Christian children's entertainment company. You can go to bravebooks.com/childers for 20% off your order. Again, that's bravebooks.com/childers. Okay, before we get to this conversation with Ty, I want to let you know a few things that are going on in the ministry. Number one, I am back on X, you guys. A few years ago, I left Twitter. It was such a dark place. I just needed the break, and I'm glad I did that. But I have really felt a sense of calling to get back on Twitter, get back in the battle of ideas on there. So I'm interacting on X. You can find me at x.com, and my handle is Alisa_Childers. And I am trying to be fairly active there. So if you really want to stay on top of kind of my daily thoughts on things, that's where I'm going to be posting a lot of that stuff. If you're not on X, I would not recommend that you get on there unless you really feel called to the fight, because there's a lot of ideological, spiritual warfare battles going on X, and I just feel called to be a part of that right now. So I've been pretty active. It's been a lot of I want to say fun, but I think, after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, I saw this meme going around where it's like, this is all the people pleasing leaving my body after the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And I definitely feel that way. So it's been fun and invigorating and fulfilling to be able to speak into some of the real-time things that are happening. So I'm doing that on X. Again, that's Alisa_Childers if you want to follow over there. I also want to let you know some exciting news, guys. Many of you have been asking, when is the Unshaken Faith podcast coming back? Of course, that's a podcast that I have done for the last couple of years with my friend Natasha Crane, who, in my opinion, is one of the clearest, most courageous voices about what's going on in our culture right now. And we've been doing a podcast up until this point that is weekly 15 to 20-minute episodes doing cultural and political commentary. We're expanding it now to be more long form, like an hour or so. And that's going to be at least once a month. So it'll be a real special episode once a month. We've just recorded today the newest episode. So that's coming very soon. So if you haven't subscribed on audio platforms, subscribe to the Unshaken Faith podcast. But the new addition is that we're coming to YouTube as well. So you can go to YouTube, search up Unshaken Faith. Let me see what the actual handle is, because I want you to be able to subscribe to that. It's at Unshaken Faith Pod. So if you go to YouTube, you can subscribe at Unshaken Faith Pod, and that's where the episodes are going to be on YouTube. Also want to let you know, guys, we have 2 more Unshaken conferences. We've done 10. I can't even believe we have done 10 Unshaken conferences with Natasha Crane and Frank Turek all over the United States, and we have 2 more. We're not really sure what's going to happen with the Unshaken conference after that. So if you've ever wanted to go to one, now is the time. So many of you have become aware of Frank Turek's ministry over the past week because of his involvement in being there with Charlie Kirk when he was shot, and being with him on the way to the hospital. He's been preaching the gospel all over every media outlet you can think of. He spoke at Charlie's memorial. So a lot of new people are aware of Frank. And Frank brings the fire at the Unshaken Conference. We're going to be talking about all the things that up until now, a lot of churches have been kind of afraid to talk about. We're talking about what is real justice compared to social justice that we see in our culture. We're going to be talking about abortion. We're talking about radical gender ideology that's coming for our kids. We're really going to try to be with like-minded Christians and equip the church to talk about these things, give them language and tone with which to talk about these things. So 2 more are left. If you want to register, we'd love to see you come out to Southern California. We're going to be in San Clemente at Calvary Chapel South OC on October 25th. Please, if you're anywhere in the Southern California area or can get there and come see us at the Unshaken Conference. In November 8th, we're going to be at Stonebriar Community Church in Dallas. Anywhere in the Dallas area, come see us. We are going to equip Christians. You know, we've got the Share the Arrows event coming up in Dallas with Allie Beth Stuckey. That's a women's conference. We've got 5,000 women coming from all over the country, and that's going to be amazing. I want you to come to that. But the difference between that and the Unshaken Conference that will be there about a month later is that this is not just for women. This is for the church. So if you have friends, whether they're male or female, the Unshaken Conference is for you, and we really, really want to equip you to be able to talk about these things. So if you want to register for that, go to unshakenconference.com, and you can register for your tickets. Ladies, if you want to register for the Share the Arrows event in Dallas, you can go to sharethearrows.com and use my code Alisa15 for 15% off your registration. Come to both. If you're in the area, come to both. We'd love it. They're going to be different enough. I'm doing completely different talks at both of those conferences, so we'd love to see you come out for all of that. Finally, I want to remind you that the student version of Another Gospel, which is my book that addresses the movement of progressive Christianity, we've just come out with a student version. You can pre-order it today wherever you get your books. Mardel.com is offering a discount for the pre-order. This is why pre-orders are so important. When there's a big pre-order, what it does is it signals the media outlet or the outlet that's selling, the retail outlet, that there's a lot of people interested in this book. So they'll order more. They might even push it in their advertisements and in their marketing. So do me a favor. If there is a student in your life, maybe a youth pastor, buy a copy, buy 10 copies for your youth pastors. See if they'll go through this with their students, because it's really written in a way that is accessible for students. There's updated examples, there's discussion questions, and I really want to get this into the hands of students so that they can recognize and spot progressive Christianity wherever they see it and have biblical language to oppose it, to counter it, and to answer it from a biblical perspective. So again, that's called Another Gospel Student Edition, wherever books are sold. Get the pre-order now. Comes out October 21st. Okay, without any further ado, here is Ty Jones. So Ty, we first met a few years ago, actually, at the Cross-Examine Instructor Academy. You were a student that you work with Cross-Examine now. You're on staff there, but you gave a really interesting talk on Freemasons. And I remember, because I know nothing about that. People are always asking about that. And I'm like, Freemasons, I don't know anything about this. And then there's this girl giving this really good talk about the history of it, why it's unbiblical, why we should be concerned about it. So I am so thrilled that you're here, because we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk a little bit about Black fraternities and maybe some connections that are there. Interesting episodes. What are the Freemasons?
Okay, so Freemasonry is a secret society. Some would call it a society of secrets because they don't like the term secret society.
Okay.
But basically, it is something that went from being about building the churches and different infrastructures from Europe, and then it became like a spiritual building. So it's basically an organization that's about making good men better, and it's about basically salvation by works, but you have to do all these rituals and keep their secrets. And that's basically what Freemasonry is, a separate religion, but they don't want to be known as a religion. But ultimately, it's a religion where men believe that they can work themselves to what's called the Celestial Lodge. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more about that, because you're calling it a religion. First of all, how influential is it, do you think?
I'm not sure if it's as influential as it would have been maybe 50 to 100 years ago. It seems like the trend is kind of downward, but that's just based on just a little bit of information that I have.
Okay.
But fraternities and sororities, which is ultimately what we're going to get into, those are still pretty popular. And there's a correlation, I think, between Freemasonry and Greek organizations. Yeah.
Okay, so how did you do all this research? Because it would seem like it would be hard to do research on a secret society because they don't want to talk. They don't want to publish their materials. Like, how did you find resources to even have an understanding of what's going on? Are there people who have left it that are speaking out, or how does that work?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways. So I think people are under the assumption that there aren't resources that are available to the public, but there are. Like you can go to certain Freemason lodges. They have their own websites. Whatever information is there, you can interview people. That's how I got a lot of the information that I have. People who've left the organizations. There are books written by people who are still in the organizations. And I think for Freemasonry, what gave me a whole bunch of resources were John Ankerberg's book, and Ron Rhodes also wrote a book about Freemasonry and how Christians should think about it. So you go to the footnotes and look and see what their primary resources are. And a lot of these lodges, they have their newsletters. Like you can look up some of these newsletters from like the 80s and see what they were putting in print. So there is plenty of documentation. You just have to know where to look.
Okay, so what are some of the principles of Freemasonry? Like you mentioned that they want to make themselves better, and it's men only, right?
It is men only. There are some, I guess you could call them sister groups. Like you have the Eastern Stars, which they have to be run. Their meetings have to be run by someone who actually is a Mason, but it's like the female version of Freemasonry. And they even have groups for young women and groups for young teenagers. So there's different little families. Ron Rhodes does a really good job of listing the different groups of Freemasonry in his book. But the principles, it mostly is about living a good life and doing good works in your society. And
Okay.
there's also the conspiracy theory side. So I think in John Ankerberg's book, they have their suspicions that Freemasonry actually is being used for people to politically get influence into the churches. So if you get someone that's in your church that's a Freemasonry, they they say you probably shouldn't put them in any type of leadership, because then they might also start to bring in their views of morality and religion, which ultimately is a religion of universalism. So that's
Oh,
really the
okay.
main problem, I would say, is why Christians shouldn't be a part of it, is because they don't want you to really definitively assign a title to God or define who God is. It's basically everyone can come sit at the table together, everyone can pray together, and we're just all going to worship the grand architect of the universe, is what they would call him. So it's
Okay.
all about universalism, basically.
Okay, interesting. Would they call themselves Christians or no?
Many of them would, but you have different types of lodges. So you could have a Muslim lodge, you could have a Buddhist lodge.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
So if you
talk
go to
about that. How do you do Muslim Freemasonry?
So I haven't done a lot of research on that. I
Okay.
just know it exists. So here in America, most of them would probably define themselves as Christian. Although I actually got into a debate with a Freemason on TikTok, and the more we talked, it was very interesting back and forth. I don't know if you're on TikTok a lot, but a lot of
Not
times
a
people
lot.
can like, oh yeah, it's so you can, what they call is, you can stitch somebody's video and respond to what they're saying. And I'm not gonna lie, we got a little bit of spicy. I hadn't watched as many of your videos about how to peacefully respond to people. So we're taking a little bit of jabs at each other. But the more we talked, the more I could see that he really didn't even have a Christian worldview. He basically was an atheist who was a Freemason, but he just assumed that he was a Christian because he was a Mason.
Okay,
So
interesting.
yeah.
So are there, I mean, I don't know where the reality blurs with the conspiracy theory, but are there rituals they do? You kind of you see these movies where it's like this secret thing they go in and do this ritual where everybody's got masks and robes. I mean, is that
Mhm.
is that reality? Is that just the conspiracy side?
Yeah, I think they actually had to publish. They ended up publishing a lot of their rituals many, many years ago. And so that's how a lot of people found out exactly what it is that they're doing. Now, I'm sure you're only going to get but so much information, but some of this documentation is available online. So you can go look it up yourself. Ron Rhodes includes a lot of the specific rituals.
Okay. And how do people get brought into it?
Well, they are not supposed to go look for people. They want people to come and find them. So typically, you can tell people that you're a Freemason, but they're not supposed to be like, hey, we're not going to recruit you. Like, if you see that I'm in this organization and you want to be a part of it, you approach me, and then that's how we'll go about that.
And what about the rings? Is that, people are always like, "Oh, is that a Freemason ring? Do they have, or is that somebody else?"
No, I think some of them do wear rings. I don't
Okay.
know a lot about, yeah, their jewelry. I think the white, I forget what they call it, but it's the apron. So they often
Okay.
you'll see them wear the aprons even at funerals. So they have these funeral rites. One of my friends, actually, I went to her father's funeral, and he was a Mason, and they had this whole segment where it like took over the whole ceremony. It was very interesting, but they like wear the white cloth because it symbolizes purity, and so it's baked into it. They really think that they have to do this ritual even in death.
Mm.
Hmm.
What is their morality? You mentioned that one of the reasons, you need to be really careful to know not to bring somebody into a position of leadership in a church that might be a Freemason is because their view of morality would be brought in. So what is their general morality?
I mean, I think they want to do good things typically. So you're not talking about people who are just from my understanding hell bent on causing chaos, but it's because they have a false worldview. So you don't want to bring them to do any type of teaching in your
Sure.
Christian church because they hold this universalist idea. And I know that not all, this is the thing. So not all Freemasons have done all of the different levels. And then there's these different family groups too. So like you have Scottish, right? They're the ones that go up to, I think, the 32nd and 33rd degree, and most people go into the Blue Lodge, which is the first 3 degrees. So everybody does the Blue Lodge. And then after you get through the third of the Blue Lodge, then you can split off into Scottish Rite or York Rite, or if there's other degrees, you can do that. Scottish Rite has like 13 different degrees. So anyway, I think sometimes people are like, oh, everybody's a 33rd degree Mason. That's not really true. So someone who's only done the first 2 or 3 steps or degrees is not going to have the same information as someone who's maybe Scottish Rite and is on degree 25, or someone who's York Rite and is on degree 10.
So many of the ideological pitfalls that our kids get into, especially around the college age, come from maybe not having the solid foundation of a biblical worldview as children. And I want to recommend to you Foundation Worldview. They have a biblical worldview curriculum that lays the foundation for seeking truth in all aspects of life. The goal is to help your little ones, when they're still really small, see that everything that they think about the world aligns with the worldview presented in Scripture. So the biblical worldview curriculum is going to help you explore basic questions like, what is truth? Who is God? How did life begin? What does it mean to be human? How can I tell right from wrong? We did this curriculum in our home, and it was so fruitful. My son to this day can tell you what is truth. He can tell you what other religions believe. Very, very amazing curriculum. It's easily implemented in the home or the church or in your Christian school. So it's designed for Christian educators, parents, church leaders who really want to take a proactive approach so that their kids don't buy into secular and damaging ideologies when they're older. So go to foundationworldview.com and use the promo code Alisa for 10% off of any family, church, or school license. Again, foundationworldview.com. Use my code Alisa. That sounds like Scientology.
It's a lot. It can be very confusing.
Yeah, I mean, that's like, like the ladder you after whatever it is in Scientology. All right, let's get into the meat of what we're really going to talk. I wanted to get a little bit of, just from my understanding, because I know nothing about it, just kind of wanted to get my head wrapped around like what we're basically talking about. But really going to talk about sororities and fraternities. So what is the connection between Freemasonry and the Greek, sorority fraternity thing on college campuses?
Basically, all of these fraternity rituals they've basically just taken what's in the Freemasonry rituals and kind of tweaked them a little bit, but overall they're just stealing them from them.
Wow.
And I've read like 3 or 4 different books that basically parrot the same thing. And these are books written by people who are still in the organizations. And we're not talking about people who are angry and don't like the organizations, people who are still happy members. They admit it.
Wow. Okay, so what are some of the is hazing? Is that something that comes from Freemasonry? Or I don't know I also know nothing about
Mhm.
sororities and fraternities. So are you making that connection, or are they saying, yeah, this is where we got this information?
They are saying it. So
Okay.
there's a book by Ricky Jones. He's a member of Kappa Alpha Psi. He said that our rituals basically came from Freemasonry and these Elks lodges and other religions. Um, there's a book called Black Greek 101 by Walter Kimbrough. He's also a member of Alpha Phi Alpha, and he confirms that there is a connection between Freemasonry and Greek life. And then there's a really long scholarly book. It was written by Freemasons and members of the Divine Nine organizations, and they said that Alpha Phi Alpha, which is the first Black fraternity that still exists, their founders were Freemasons, and their first initiation ritual was in a Masonic lodge. So I have yet to read a book about the history of Greek life where they don't talk about it. And even Hank Newer, I've got a couple books right here by him. Hank Newer is a scholar on hazing. I know people probably don't even know that there's a scholar
There's
on hazing.
hazing scholars.
There's
Amazing.
hazing scholars. Yeah. So he's got this book. I'll show it right now. It's called Wrongs of Passage. And then there's this one. It's called Hazing. And so there's a lot of different essays in there about Greek life. And he talks about how all of them basically find their root in Freemasonry. So I found
Wow.
quite a few sources to back up that claim.
Fascinating. Okay, what are the Divine Nine organizations?
So these are the 9 Black fraternities, the Black Greek lettered organizations. You might hear them be called Black BGLOs, Black Greek lettered organizations. So these are the 9 that's Alpha Phi Alpha, Omega Psi Phi, Phi Beta Sigma, Iota Phi Theta, and then you've got the sororities. You got the Alpha Kappa Alpha, Delta Sigma Theta, Sigma Gamma Rho, Zeta Phi Beta, and I know I'm missing one. Kappa. I think I said Kappa Alpha Psi. Anyway, there's 9 of them. So those are the Black Greek lettered organizations. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and are there any other Black fraternities that aren't a part of the Divine Nine, or it's just those 9?
There's all different types of fraternities and sororities.
Okay.
Yeah, like there's band fraternities. There are business fraternities. I actually pledged a business fraternity in college, and it wasn't a sorority because it was co-ed, so we call it a fraternity. There's all types of different Greek lettered organizations, but Divine Nine is a specific brand that was started to specifically reach out to African Americans.
Okay, so would I be correct in saying Freemasonry originally was maybe more white, and then the Divine Nine was a way to bring that into the African American community, or how does that work?
So Freemasonry originally Black people were not included, and so that's why you have a sect of Freemasons called the Prince Hall Freemasons. So they started their own lodges because they weren't allowed into the white Masonic lodges. But now I think they've kind of lightened the rules on that. So you might see a Black person that's not a Prince Hall Freemason, but typically Black Masons are Freemason or Prince Hall Freemasons. And so then you had the fraternities came after Freemasonry. I think Phi Beta Kappa was the first fraternity at William and Mary College. So you had all these white fraternities, and then in the early 1900s, you start to see Black fraternities.
Okay. What
Mhm.
on earth got you interested in all of this? I mean, we're in the world of apologetics, but I mean, we need it. We need somebody who knows about this stuff.
Yeah, so there's a few different reasons. So for one, I had already been doing YouTube for maybe 2 or 3 years, and I got this inbox question like, "Hey, I'm about to go to college. As a Christian, can I do this? Because I keep seeing all these videos on YouTube that tell me that I can't, and then there's other people who say that I can." And so I knew from my own experience in college a little bit, but I also knew that I had like I'm coming from an area of I'm just getting into Christian apologetics and theology. I'm coming out of the Word of Faith movement. And so when I was in what I would say not the best headspace about theology and what Christianity is, it was kind of like I just had this I guess I would say I wrote off a lot of things as all that is evil because it's not something that I agree with. And so
Mm.
when I'm learning more about like learning how to study and primary resources and just having sound arguments, I'm like, okay, I need to approach this from more of I don't want to just think it's wrong just because I grew up thinking it was wrong. And another reason is I found it interesting because when I was in college, I actually wanted to pledge a sorority. And so I went to an interest meeting and it was pretty bad because I did not get in. I was rejected, and I actually have a
Oh.
whole yeah. It was harsh. I was rejected, and it was kind of just a traumatic experience. I actually talk about it in one of my YouTube videos, like what it was like trying to get into a sorority and how it felt, and just the impact of that experience on my life and how sororities and fraternities just it's a big deal when you're in college. So I had that experience, and then of course being in a business fraternity, I had already seen a little bit of what it's like to go through a little bit of hazing and the initiation rituals, but they just weren't on the same scale as what you typically see in a lot of these Black fraternities and sororities.
How influential do you think the whole sorority, fraternity, Greek life kind of thing is on a typical college campus? Is it just kind of isolated off to a particular sector, or is it sort of permeate the whole atmosphere and culture of a campus?
It's a big deal. It's definitely a big deal. I'm sure some campuses is maybe not as important, but I know when I first got to the college that I went to, we had like this big picnic, everybody's kind of going from table to table and looking up organizations, and everybody's wearing these Go Greek t-shirts. I'm like, oh, what is that? Because I didn't have family or anybody in my life who was a part of Greek life. See, Greek life is very familial.
Mm,
So a lot of people, like if your mom is in a sorority, typically she's going to encourage you to be in a sorority, and they have like what's called legacy. So a lot of those people kind of already know the ins and out and the rules and how you'll increase your chances of being able to be chosen. So if you don't know any of that and you step on a college campus, you're going to be like, what is all this? Meanwhile, some of them are already like, okay, if I want to be in this sorority by the time I hit my sophomore or junior year, I need to have been doing this amount of community service. My GPA needs to be here. I need to be talking to this person. So it becomes like this whole thing. And so if you're not ready, like you're probably going to get left behind. But I said all that to say, Greeks, I think they do an excellent job of marketing themselves to attract people,
mm,
because nobody wants to be on a college campus and feel like they're alone. So it gives you that community. And I
yeah.
think that is it's a good thing. We're created for community, but it's the ways that you get that community, and I think how it trains people to look at other people and other people, I think, can be very dangerous. But yeah, Greek life is a huge deal. They do a lot of programs. Some of the programs are really good. They do a lot of community service. I think if you want to help them do community service, you can sign up. Usually that'll probably get you some brownie points with them. They do step shows. They do when you go to parties, they do all the strolling. So if you see a line of people doing a dance that's clearly choreographed, you don't want to go anywhere near them because they might you might offend them, and then that could wreck your life. So
Wow.
Greek life was everywhere. They wear, their letters. People want to wear the letters. They want to be seen. And so for a lot of people, it is a way to get noticed and gain a little bit of popularity. And of course, there's other good, solid reasons too, because it can get you connections, possibly with future job, career opportunities, and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a big deal.
As Christian parents, we're always looking for supplements to our discipleship, right? We disciple our kids. We do our best to give them a Christian worldview. We do curriculums. We do all sorts of things. But I know if you're like me, sometimes you just want some entertainment that's not going to poison their mind, that's not going to give them a short attention span, and might even strengthen their biblical values. Well, that's why I love what Brave Books is doing. They've partnered with voices like Kirk Cameron to create stories and shows that are not only safe, but actually strengthen your child's faith and values. Our very own Frank Turek has a book on bravebooks.com. And recently they've launched a streaming platform called Brave Plus. This features carefully curated content that avoids that overstimulation, promotes positive behavior, and reinforces biblical truth. It's like whole food entertainment for your child's soul. So right now you can get 20% off your first purchase by going to bravebooks.com/childers. Again, that's bravebooks.com/childers, because what your kids watch and read really matters. Wow. See, this is all so completely foreign to me because college just wasn't really in the culture of my family. I don't think either one of my parents are college graduates. I went to community college for a few semesters, which was basically high school with ashtrays. So there was no like real sense of community or any kind of unifying principle like that. So this is really fascinating to me to learn more about it. So, okay, when it comes to fraternity, sorority, the whole Greek life thing, are there religious elements to it? So I guess what I mean by that is obviously there's going to be rituals. There's things we'll talk about hazing in a second.
Mhm.
There's things that are done in a organized kind of way. Do any of those things have religious undertones? Is there anything involved in that might conflict with a biblical worldview?
Yeah, I would definitely say that there's a lot of religious elements, which is why so many people are now coming out of the organizations, because they can look back and say, oh, we were bowing at altars to get into
Oh,
this organization. We were reciting prayers. We were singing hymns about our founders, or, about different things. There's a lot of syncretism. So if you look through the rituals, which was also a great resource, that was actually where I started, I think. I'm like, I'm just going to sit down and read all of these rituals. And so I think out of the 9 organizations, 8 of the, I'll say, alleged rituals are online. Is kind of bad because a lot of times they'll say, oh, these aren't our rituals. So if you point to something and say, hey, what about this? They'll say, you can't know what that means because you're not in it. Or how do you even know that that is our ritual?
Right,
But if
right.
you look in the rituals, there's a lot of syncretism. So in the Delta Theta Sigma's ritual, it talks about how basically whatever God you choose, that it doesn't really matter as long as you have chosen one. And then like in the Kappa Alpha Psi ritual, you'll see them doing a skit where they are seeking some type of wisdom from the Delphic shrine. And then they talk about like a Kappa Alpha Psi heaven. And even in the book that I read, African American Fraternities and Sororities, there was like something that Deltas would say, something about when I get to heaven, I'm going to show St. Peter my Delta pin and then he'll let me in.
Oh, wow.
So there are some religious elements. And then there's also like this marrying of Black fraternity sorority life with Black church culture. And some churches are totally against it. I'll say that. So I don't want to like throw the Black church up under the bus. I think that's a very nuanced conversation. But a lot of the Black church denominations seem to be okay with it, specifically like AME. And I think that's because Richard Jones and Absalom Jones, they were Freemasons and they started that. It's either AME or AME Zion. I'm so sorry. Those are 2 different Black denominations, but they started one of those. So typically in those denominations, you'll see a lot of Greek life represented. Pastors are Greek, members are Greek. They might wear your Greek letters to church one Sunday. So you'll see that kind of thing going on.
So in our conversation today, talking about Greek life, is this really just kind of isolated to the Divine Nine that we're talking about? Obviously, there's a lot more fraternities and sororities on campuses. Is the same thing applied to across the board, or are we just kind of more specifically talking about the Divine Nine with what you're talking about?
So most of my research was Divine Nine. I actually get that question a lot. Well, what about everybody else? What about white fraternities? What about, I would say any organizations that do what you find in these D9 organizations, I would have the exact same criticisms. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even saying that the D9 organizations were the ones who came up with all this stuff. They are borrowing from the white organizations that they were not allowed membership into. That's why you
Gotcha.
have Black Greek lettered organizations. So you have like, honor societies that might have Greek letters. But if all you're doing is just having chapter meetings where you talk about, I don't know, how to have better grades or, things like that, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with being in an organization that does something like that. But if you're in an organization that says you cannot join unless you bow at this altar, you can't join unless you say this secret vow, secret prayer, and also you can't know anything that you're going to say or do or believe until after you go through, I would be very
Mm.
apprehensive about that.
So can you talk a little bit more about like bowing at the altars? What kind of altars are they, and what are the prayers like? Is it are they saying, you pick your deity and then you pray this prayer to that deity, or do the prayers have real specific things in them that are aimed at a particular religious deity?
Overall, it seems to be very generic, but like they'll have a table set up. I actually interviewed a couple of ex Deltas and they showed like a picture from their ritual book. And so they had like the table with the tablecloth and it has like Delta, Sigma Theta, and some other objects, maybe some candles. And for the most part, it seems to be that you're just acknowledging that you're going to be a faithful member for life. And I can't remember. It's been a while since I've looked at the actual initiation ritual, but it's like, you're going to devote your life to serving Delta Sigma Theta or Alpha Kappa Psi or whatever organization it is.
Okay. And then,
Mhm,
okay, so let's talk about hazing because,
mhm,
again, I just know so little about this. But you see on the news sometimes somebody was harmed, hurt
mhm.
by the hazing, and I think there have even been some people die. What is hazing? Because that's kind of deeply baked into the culture of fraternities and sororities. And why should Christians be concerned about it?
So hazing is the rites of passage. Is basically the things that you do to gain acceptance for these organizations that you aren't supposed to do. Um, so there's a difference typically in how the white organizations haze versus how Black fraternities and sororities haze. All hazing is bad and it's all dangerous. I would even say the business fraternity that I was in, they've never physically touched me, but there were things that made me anxious that, could have, if I had some type of, I don't know, mental health problem
Mm.
and the things that I experienced, I went, it could have been bad. And hazing in certain cities or states, excuse me, I think is a felony. So you can get into a lot of trouble if someone
Oh,
gets
wow.
hurt. Yeah, so be careful about that, college students. But so yeah, in white fraternities and sororities, you typically see a lot of drinking, and this is why a lot of people have died from, intoxication.
Wow. Like
And
alcohol poisoning?
it's alcohol poisoning.
Wow.
And yeah, like some of the stories, because there's so many of them at this point. They're all over the internet, and there's one story like where one of the students was drinking overnight and he passed out. And then I think he woke up and people just thought he was going to be okay. So then he passed out again. But you could see, I think he fell down the stairs. He fell down the stairs and they didn't call the police because, oh, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And so eventually he died. And so you have
Wow.
all this documented because it was filmed in their fraternity house, but we've never seen it. But this is just from what the parents are saying. So there's just so many times this person could have been saved, but they never called the cops. So you have that kind of thing going on. But in Black fraternities and sororities, you don't typically see the drinking. You do see the staying up very late. You see the paddling, and that is where it gets really, really dangerous, where they are physically beating people to death.
Wow. And that's
Physically.
happened.
It has, unfortunately. Caleb Wilson, actually, this past February, I think he was either a sophomore or a junior. He was online to pledge Omega Psi Phi. And he was killed because when he was pledging, they were in some off campus building. And his fraternity brothers, or the people who were pledging him, they came and punched him in the chest repeatedly. Every brother punched him individually because that was happening to all the pledges. So he went down on, I can't remember who made the final blow, but he went down, passed out. And instead of them immediately calling the cops, what they did was try to get him out of the clothes because they have to wear certain clothes when they're pledging.
Mm.
So they tried to get him out of all his clothes and then put him in regular clothes and then took him to a different location and then said, hey, this person is here. He passed out while we were playing basketball. And so by the
Oh,
time he actually got to the hospital, all those moments are pivotal. We don't know if he would have survived either way, but because they didn't want to get caught hazing, they took all these steps to try to cover it up, and they still got caught. And so the 2 or 3 who have been found, they're the suspects or the ones who are going to go to trial for this. I don't think any of that has been resolved yet because it just happened in February. But all of them were kicked out of the organization. They were blamed for this whole thing, but the organization kind of wipes their hands of it and says, oh, it's just these college students who weren't really paying attention to our rules and rules of conduct. But most people know that if you're going to join specifically the fraternities, you should expect that they're going to lay hands on you.
guys, every morning I look forward to getting up. First thing I do is I try to drink a big glass of water. And the second thing I do is I make my cup of coffee. And I love 7 Weeks Coffee. It's my absolute favorite coffee company for so many reasons. Number one, because the coffee is just so good. It's shade grown, low acid, organically farmed, mold free. It checks all of the boxes. But I also love that it's America's pro-life coffee company. They are on a mission to fund the pro-life movement one cup of coffee at a time. They've just hit an amazing milestone. Thanks to so many of you guys who listen to this show, who have subscribed to the Heartbeat Club to get your 7 Weeks Coffee delivered in the mail every month. They've raised and donated over $1 million to fund the pro-life movement. They call themselves 7 Weeks Coffee because at 7 weeks of gestation, the baby's the size of a coffee bean. They donate 10% of every sale to support pregnancy care centers all across the country. Now, you can go to 7weekscoffee.com and save 15% forever when you subscribe, and you're also going to get a free gift. Plus, exclusively for my listeners, you can use the code Alisa for an extra 10% off your first order. So that's 25% of a total savings off of your first order plus your free gift. Again, go to 7weekscoffee.com and use my code Alisa. I mean, I can imagine that the pressure is so high to go along with it because you want to be included in the group. You want to make it through the hazing process to be accepted. I don't know the language, but that's really sad. That's kind of scary. So ultimately, I guess the question that we want to get to today is, and the whole reason I have you on to talk about this is because ultimately on this show, we want to give Christians directions on equipping them to identify the core principles of Christianity, to discern what's counterfeit, proclaim the gospel. Should Christians, in your opinion, pledge Greek fraternities and sororities, or should they do it with caution? Should they just avoid it altogether? What's your opinion?
Yeah, I would say at least proceed with caution. I particularly don't think anybody should be a part of a D9 organization, or again, any organization that does the things that Divine Nine organizations do. That's not to say that there aren't legitimate Christians in them, or that they're all bad people, or that they've all done these things. Like, some of these stories are just the worst of the worst, but it is happening. Frank Noor talks about in his book, there's typically been one hazing death a year for the last 60 years or so. And that's
Wow.
not just Divine Nine, that's across all different types of organizations and military schools and sports teams. So hazing, it hits a lot of different types of groups, but it is especially present in these Greek letters. And so I think people should be aware of that because it can be very dangerous.
And then somebody might say, well, you're not a member of the organization, so you don't have a right to talk about it.
Mhm.
And again, like somebody like me who I just know so little about it, how can Christians who aren't members of Greek societies and organizations or Freemasonry speak
Mhm.
out about something that they're not members of? Because so much of it does seem to be secret.
Yeah, I just keep it based on what I can prove is documented. So if the rituals are online, I'm very careful to call them the alleged rituals, because no one
Hmm.
no one really confirms if they're the real rituals except the ex-members. But look at the ritual and say, okay, hey, person at my church, or my best friend or my sister or whoever, why does it say this, and how does this align with the Christian worldview? And why does the Bible say this, but this ritual seems to be going in an opposite direction? Or read books by the scholars of the organization. So African American Fraternities and Sororities, I think that book is like 400 or 500 pages. And again, it's written by people who are in the organization. So why wouldn't I believe someone who still loves the org and has put all this information together and says, hey, this is what we're really about? Then you
Hmm.
see it. I think that's a strong resource if you're talking to people who are already in the organization. So I just don't think it's a good argument to say, oh, you have to be a part of it to know what's really going on. Now, of course, I can't speak from my own personal experience because I've never pledged, but I mean, I've also never been a Jehovah's Witness or a
Right.
Muslim or, any of these other religions, but I can read their text, I can read their documentation. So I think it's a really just it's an argument that I think it shuts people's brains off because they really think nobody can know about this except me because I've done it. Well, yeah, you have your personal experiences, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're an expert even on your own organization.
Mm. I can imagine that speaking out about some of this stuff has gotten you some pushback. So what's the
Mhm.
pushback been like? As because I would imagine a lot of people might be scared to talk about it. So what's the pushback been like for you?
Well, for me, I'm in a unique position because typically the people who speak out about it are people who actually did pledge. And so they have their personal experiences to go off of. Whereas like me, when I wanted to do it in college, I didn't make it in, but I just have like, I have these certain experiences of the process of even trying and attempting to get in. But I just say, hey, I'm a Christian. I know my Bible very well, and I don't have to know what it's like to do it to discern if what is in writing is in alignment with my Christianity. So I get that. I've also been told, oh, you're just saying this because you didn't get in. And like, no, I went into this pretty objectively. I'm like, if it's okay for Christians to do this, then I don't want to be standing on the side of, oh, we just shouldn't do it because I didn't get in. I don't think that's fair. There's plenty of things in life that I didn't get to experience that I don't think are necessarily wrong now just because I didn't get to experience. So if I didn't think Greek life was wrong or didn't have problems, then I would say, go ahead and do it. So I've gotten that. Obviously, being a Black person speaking out against these things is like, well, why don't you ever say anything about the white fraternities and sororities? And I'm like, I mean, if it's wrong, doesn't matter whether it's white or Black. And also, if your issue is with the white fraternities, like, YouTube is free. You do your own video about the white fraternity. I'm
Yeah,
talking about the Black fraternities because it impacts people in my personal life.
right.
And if one of my YouTube watchers specifically wanted to know about that stream of Greek life, then that's the one I'm going to focus on. I can't focus on everything. I'm just going to focus on the ones that are most important to me, most relevant to me. So that's what I did.
Yeah, well, good for you.
Mhm.
If there's somebody who is choosing to leave, maybe they're starting to see the light, their eyes are opening, a Christian perhaps. If they leave, what can they do to mature in their faith in Christ? Maybe they don't know where to start, they don't know where to go. What would your advice be?
Oh, that's a good question because there's a movement. It's the the denouncing movement. So a lot of people are coming out of Greek life because with YouTube over the last 5 years, so many people were sharing their testimonies, whether it was about hazing or just being bullied or just how mean they maybe were to other people when they were in it. My friend Melissa Blair, she gave me an amazing interview. I mean, her hazing process was horrific, and she admits that she did some awful things to people under this. But I do want to caution Christians because there seems to be a lot of Christians who come out of it and they're excited about getting out, but it's like a pipeline to some pretty bad theology. I would say like hyper charismatic or the deliverance ministry, where there's a lot of focus on generational curses and I've got to break this bloodline and this covenant and all this kind of things because they're saying, we took these rituals, we made a covenant, and so now we've got to be really careful to break this covenant because we made a blood oath. And so I just think people are kind of going overboard in coming out. So I would say read your Bible, make sure you're going to a church that's theologically sound. I don't even think it's enough just to say go to a Bible believing church because plenty of heretical churches teach the Bible. You need to know the basics of Christianity. This is why it was so hard for me to come out of Word of Faith, because to me, it's like, I mean, we're all using the Bible. So who are you to say that you're interpreting it wrong or you're interpreting it right and I'm wrong? But then when you start to learn basics about Bible interpretation, which is hermeneutics, or just the fundamentals of Christianity, just learning some of these creeds, it's like, oh, that's how you define Christianity. That's the box that it's in. So I don't have to necessarily break a blood oath to be a Christian. All I have to do is repent of my sins and put my faith in Jesus. So all this other stuff, I would caution Christians to not get into the conspiracy theory side of it. Put your faith in Christ and then get some discipleship and maybe even be careful about immediately turning on your camera to say, well, I'm now out of the organization and I'm a Christian, so therefore I'm a voice of authority. You can share your testimony, but Christianity, just take some time just reading the word and understanding what the Christian faith is before you get out there. Put yourself under people who can really disciple you before you become like this person to say, I want to share my story with the world. I just see a lot of people getting kind of wrapped up in some not so good theology, I think, because they're just a little confused. Yeah.
That is really wise advice. A couple of comments on that. I see that all the time. And part of me, it's like you see people, not even in this world of the Greek fraternity world, but even just somebody coming to Christ, and then they immediately start a YouTube channel or an Instagram, and they're documenting, oh, I'm 3 days now that I'm a Christian and 5 days. And it's like part of my heart is like, oh, praise God, that's so awesome. And I love the innocence of it, and I love the newness of it, and it's very inspiring. But at the same time, I kind of worry about that person because that, and a lot of these accounts blow up really quickly. And when that happens, then people who want to access that platform, who want that power or that influence or want to be in with that, are drawn to it. So you have all these different sort of things coming for this person. And I just see it from over here going, oh no, I hope that person doesn't start discipling you. And then this false counterfeit gospel person is kind of coming after you. So that's really good advice, just to put the microphone down, get discipled, grow a little bit in your faith. It doesn't mean that you can't share your life. But yeah, I echo that warning to be really careful, especially if you're new in the faith. Now, I wanted to comment on something you said just a second ago, because I think it's very important, and I want to just maybe drill down on it a little bit. I didn't realize, and again, because I just know so little about this, but you mentioned a blood oath. First of all, what is that?
Well, I'm not sure because
Okay.
I've never taken it, but that's just what I'm hearing a lot of people who have come out of the organizations. I've heard some of them say, I took a blood oath. So when we pledged our sorority, they took some of our blood and we had to sign the documents. That's not in any ritual that I've read. That's just kind of what I've heard. And so now people are kind of responding based on, I guess, their individual experiences.
Okay, so I can see why somebody might come out of that and become a Christian and then think they have to go to a deliverance ministry because, I gave blood, I signed this oath, it was a covenant, I need to somehow now break that spiritually. And I just want to say to the Christians listening to us and watching us that you don't have to do that. The Bible says that when you're in Christ, when you trust in Christ, you are delivered from the kingdom of darkness into the kingdom of light. And so there's not an extra step that you need to take. If you feel oppressed by demonic forces, Jesus told us to pray, deliver us from evil. You can certainly pray to the Lord to deliver you from that, but sometimes God uses that in our lives to sanctify us as we obey Him and do our good spiritual warfare by speaking truth into lies. That's just a little bit of a summary. I want to encourage everyone, if that's something that kind of, I don't know, that was highlighted to you in this conversation, go back into my YouTube archives. I've got a whole series on deliverance ministry where we talk about all of that. So if that's a concern for you, I would just refer you to that. I think that would be a good resource for you. And again, I could just see that all that deliverance ministry kind of side of things coming for people who are coming out of this. So very good advice there, Ty. I guess as we close out, I'm thinking about a couple of different groups of people. I'm thinking about the parents who are watching us who might have a student who is a part of this, maybe wanting to be a part of it, maybe thinking about it. What would your advice be to parents?
I would I would tell
Christian
them
parents, I
to,
mean.
yeah, right. Even non-Christian parents,
Yep.
research the organization that your child is supposed to be a part of. See if there's been any headlines about hazing deaths, whether it's at that particular college campus or just the organization in general. I just read a post this morning about an Omega Psi Phi member suing an organization because he was beaten so bad. I mean, some people have been paralyzed, some people have been blinded. Again, I'm not saying this is everybody. There are some horror stories. Most people, I don't think that's their experience, but you never want it to be your person who's getting involved in this, and they're the ones that are basically the sacrificial lamb. So research and see if they've had any issues with hazing or any deaths from hazing, and also see, like, okay, before this person signs up to be a part of the organization, how much can you tell me about the secret rituals before I get in? Because I don't think it's good for a person to say, I'm going to sign my line on the dotted line and pay you guys $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 to be a part of this organization, but I don't really know the real meaning behind the organization until I've already paid you the money and done the initiation process. I would take it to my church. I remember when I was in high school and I was taking the psychology class, they're like, yeah, we're going to hypnotize you guys for this particular day. And so I was like, oh, yeah, that sounds fun. And then my friend was like, maybe you should talk to Pastor so-and-so about this. And I talked to my pastor and they were like, yeah, you probably shouldn't let somebody just be peeking around in your brain. And now I'm so glad I did not do that. So I think people should do that with these Greek organizations. I personally wouldn't ask the pastor who's already a member because he's probably going to say, yeah, sure, it's fine. I see a lot of pastors, in my opinion, who compromise in this area. They're in the
Mm.
organizations, and some of them may even be sound theologically, but it's like you're sound, but you're telling people that it's okay to bow at an altar, which I think is a major, major problem. So I would ask someone at your church who is open mind, not just open minded, but
Biblically
unbiased. So
sound, yeah.
biblically sound and unbiased, and who can say, okay, well, let's look at these rituals together, just so you kind of know whether or not this is something that Christians should be a part of. So just do your homework.
That's good. And then how could the parents maybe talk to their students if the student's like, "Oh, I'm all in. I want to do this," and the
Mm.
parent it has some concern about it. Do you have any advice on how to interact about that?
I just, I'm so against them. I'm like, just tell your kids that they can't, because a lot of people don't have $2,000 or $3,000 in college to give to this. But some parents do, especially like in the white organizations. I've heard they can, some of them can spend $20,000 or $30,000 a semester
Wow.
so that their child can be a part of a Greek fraternity or sorority. But on a smaller scale, Black fraternities and sororities just don't have that kind of money coming in. So I don't think that everyone who wants to get in has that type of money. So parents, if you are totally against this, you can't just say, I ain't paying you the money. But of course, they could go to the bank. I had a friend, her daughter just went and got a bank loan, and she
Wow.
still got it. Yeah, so there's ways to get in. So you can cut off the money train, but if that doesn't work, I would just encourage them to tell their students to do your research before you get in, because again, why are you going to sign up for something if you don't really have all the information that you need to have before you do it?
What would be the ramifications on a student? Like, let's say there's a student watching us who's a part of this, and
Hmm.
they're convicted. They've already got questions, and they're like, "I kind of feel like I need to not be a part of this," but the price that they're gonna pay to leave might be pretty high. What are the ramifications if somebody were to leave, like, mid-semester and say, "Look, this is not biblical. This goes against my Christian faith." Are they gonna be obviously, they're gonna be ostracized, but is there further ramifications that could happen?
I think it's worse for people who are in the midst of pledging and they quit, because then you're kind of looked at like you couldn't make it through the process, and so therefore you're not worthy of this organization. And typically that kind of stuff spreads around campus. Now, if you're a type of person who doesn't care, that's fine. But a lot of times people who are looking for a community, that's going to be another hit to their ego if they are now ostracized even more so than they were before they tried to get into the organization, because I don't know, maybe they're trying to save their life. Maybe they didn't want to get hit upside their backside with a paddle. So yeah, you have to mentally prepare to possibly be an outcast on campus. I think it's worth it though, especially if you walk away with your life. Some people decide to go against their better judgment and it costs them everything. So I think it's worth it to walk away if you need to. College, it's 4 years. It feels like a long 4 years when you're there, but in hindsight, you're like, man, that time of your life goes by so fast. And there's other things that you can do in college. Now they got Ratio Christi. When I was in school, if I had known about that, I would have been trying to do something more like Ratio Christi, where you're not having to prove your allegiance by submitting yourself to getting cussed out or having to do all these chores for people or staying up so late that you can't even drive home without getting into a car accident. You just go and learn about Christianity, how to defend the faith, how to make friends with people, how to share the gospel. Like it's not this shouldn't be this horrible thing. So yeah, find another organization, find a good church. If I had access to a good church when I was in college, I don't even think sorority life wouldn't have mattered, because I would have had community elsewhere. But I couldn't find a good church. The closest church, the church that everybody was going to when I was in school, specifically Black students, it was a liberal church. In hindsight, I see that because now I know the difference. But back then I didn't know. I just thought, man, this pastor he doesn't really seem to teach a whole lot about the Bible. And none of the people in these organizations really seem to have a handle on Christianity, or else like, why are they okay with all these things? So I think the organizations have done a good job of marketing themselves as Christian. They'll say we're based on Christian principles. So if you don't read your Bible very well or at all, then these things aren't really going to stand out. But if you do just know the basics, then you should be like, oh, this is wrong.
Well, and as Christians, we're called to deny ourselves, to pick up our cross daily and follow Jesus. And a lot of times that's going to put us on the wrong side of someone's opinion of us. That's going to, possibly, I mean, we experience this as people who make content online. People talk about you all the time. They say horrible things about both of us. There's slander, there's name calling, there's all sorts of stuff. And I know that the pressure on that can feel more intense when you're a college student, when you're facing the people, like us online, we're not really looking into the eyes of the people who are saying these things. And I realize that's probably very difficult if your Christian faith is at odds with what this organization, whatever it might be, fraternity, sorority, whatever it might be, and you can't compromise your Christian faith for that. The price you have to pay might be kind of high. Jesus said, the world's going to hate you just like it hates me. And I think as Christians, we need to be willing to walk through whatever it is we walk through. I know it's easier to say that than to live it out, but just for any college student listening, where you're feeling that sense of conviction about what is going on in the organization that you're a part of, and you know that you need to leave because you can't serve two masters, you can't serve unbiblical things, you can't bow at altars and pray prayers that you shouldn't be praying and serve Jesus at the same time. I know that Ty and I just want to encourage you, like you have big sisters like us that are telling you, you can do this, you got this. And if you need to leave with your head high. Don't worry about what people think of you, because the only thing that matters is what God thinks of you. And the one thing I always think about, Ty, is, I'm going to face Jesus by myself. None of those people that I was trying to please on earth are going to be standing there with me. It's just going to be me. And I want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant, from him. And sometimes we sacrifice that by wanting to hear that from the people that we're, wanting to be in with. And we all, as Christians, no matter what our background is, no matter what our culture is, we have to be willing to make that our first priority, because the Bible says there is no Jew nor Greek, no male nor female. we are one when we're in the body of Christ. We are brothers and sisters in Christ. And so if you find yourself in a position where you have to leave something like that, know that you have family. You do have community of faithful Christians that love you, that are willing and ready to welcome you. And so I just echo what Ty said. Find a good church, get discipled in the faith, and hold your head high knowing that you've done the right thing and that you're putting Jesus first. So Ty, as we close out, where can people find you online? You're killing it. You're doing such a good job. Let people know where to find you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so I have a YouTube channel, Miss Titus Jones. That's where the bulk of my energy has gone to these days. But I do have a TikTok and an Instagram, so you can follow me there too. It's the same name. It's either Titus Jones. I think on some of my platforms it's Titus Jones. Others it's Miss Titus Jones. But YouTube is the best place to find me, Miss Titus Jones.
And you sing sometimes.
I do like to sing here and there.
I love it. All right. Well, everybody go follow Ty. Ty, thank you so much. I know that you're really putting yourself out there to talk about something like this. I know it's probably not always received well, but I just commend you for being bold and courageous and for being such a faithful servant of Jesus. And with that said, I want to just encourage everybody that as we pursue Christ, let's keep a sharp mind, a soft heart, and a thick skin. We'll see you next time.
So pray for me and I will pray for you. No turning right or left, we'll make it through. The road that's narrow and the gate that's small. Don't give up, it's gonna be